Hey, what's up and welcome to another knife review. This time I'm going to be talking about the Cold Steel American Lawman. Pretty awesome knife, medium size, sort of EDC or a hard use folder. Pick whatever task you want to throw this into and I think it's pretty much going to do a good job. For me, it's more of an EDC than anything else. I'm not a knife fighting guru. I'm not in violent situations very often. I don't work in a physical job, so I don't use my knife every day for work purposes. It's more occasional use, unless I decide to sort of go nuts and just do a lot of cutting just to test a knife, which I actually did do with this. I'll throw in some footage, but I caught a lot of cardboard with this, quite a lot actually, and it did a good job. And I also could not resist taking the triad lock out into the woods. I was cutting some wood, sort of making some stakes, just like shaving wood off, and I also batoned it through some wood as well. So it survived everything, and I was able to sharpen it back up and get a great edge on it again because of course it is AUS 8. So in my couple of weeks of testing it, I used it a lot and I was very pleased with it. It's pretty hard actually to come away from using a cold steel knife and not be impressed. This is the large Voyager, of course, and I also have the Recon one here. They're all good, but when you actually use them, you'll see where the quality comes in. Like they're just amazing value for the money and super tough. Love it. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the details of the American Lawman and why I like it and what I noticed while I was using it and carrying it. So first off, I'll just quickly go through the specs. 3.5-inch blade, hollow ground, AUS 8, G10 handle, very aggressive, and the overall weight is 4.5 ounces. It's got a triad lock in it, which is super strong, as everybody knows. So that's basically the stuff that you'll probably already know about the American Lawman, even before you watch any videos. But what I will say though is overall I find the whole package to be very ergonomic and sort of attractive overall. You've got sort of multiple options as far as grip goes. You can sort of choke back on it and get a bit more reach, or you can choke up and do more detailed work. This secondary choil, I think that's a pretty cool feature. I've become kind of a fan of that. Actually, I'll show you the Paramilitary 2, which also has that. I kind of like this one a little better because of the jimping on the underside there. That provides a little bit of traction. Whenever I've got that secondary choil or I'm getting close to the cutting edge, I like there to be traction there so I don't slip onto the cutting surface, which I actually did with this knife. I think like the first day I had it, I was just kind of like playing around with it, flicking it open and closed, and it's pretty easy for you to just slip off that smooth edge there onto the blade. So I would have preferred them to put a little bit of jimping or something down there to prevent that from happening. That being said, once I was sort of aware of that possibility, I've just been a little bit more careful and I've never had the same problem since. So it's not like a habitual problem or anything. The traction I just think is really, really amazing on these cold steel G10 knives, and even on their Grivory handles, it's not bad at all. You compare that against something else like an aluminum handle, for example, with like zero traction. Then you come over here and it's just night and day. It's like sandpaper, really. It does sort of smooth out a little bit as you use it. This guy, the Recon 1, that's probably about, I want to say 9 months old, and it's still super aggressive. Like even at 9 months, it's still a lot more aggressive than other G10 is like out of the box, but it does smooth out. You can definitely feel the difference between a brand new G10 versus a broken in G10, let's say. But that being said, even when it does break in, it's still spectacular. I've had to mod both G10 knives that I've had from Cold Steel. And there's lots of videos out there of people doing the same thing, but underneath the pocket clip, it's very rough. It's really easy. Just take it off, you know, tape out some lines there with just like masking tape or something, and then just sand underneath the clip. Not too much, you know, just enough to sort of smooth it out. And that clip is still like super tight as well. It's like you'll break your fingernails off trying to move it. So it's an extremely strong clip with a lot of traction underneath. So if you do not modify that, you're gonna rip up your pockets. And you know what, even though I have modified it, my pockets are still getting ripped up by these knives. So it's something to take into account for sure. The blade stock actually is really thick on the American Lawman. Something I noticed is that the tip is like super strong on it. I did this video called the stabbing protocol not too long ago, and this knife came in last place, the American Lawman. And like compare that, it's I'll try to show you really close here. Right at the tip is where the dramatic difference comes, you know? It's so much thicker on the American Lawman than, say, the paramilitary 2, for example. So in terms of penetrating and stabbing, I did do some stabbing with this knife, and I'll actually show that to you hopefully right now. It did okay, but when I compare it to other knives with more delicate tips, it doesn't do as good of a job. That might be a good thing or a bad thing depending how you feel. Yeah, Aus 8, love Aus 8, you know. I cut so much cardboard with this, and afterwards it was still slicing printer paper, no problem. Went out in the woods, batoned with it, sliced up a bunch of wood, came home, it was still slicing printer paper. So basically I didn't sharpen it for 2 weeks, and I did quite a lot of cutting with it, and it was still cutting printer paper like pretty cleanly, you know. Not shaving sharp anymore, but that's the other great thing about Aus 8, right? Is I was able to resharpen this. I put it on the strop afterwards, used the Spyderco Sharp Maker, and now it's back to shaving sharp. It's pretty awesome. I love Aus 8, you know. I think that edge lasts long enough, and once it does go, you know, it's easy to bring it back. Okay, so we already talked a little bit about the handle and the materials. Really like it overall. I'm not like opposed to steel liners at all. I don't really care for pure stainless steel handles, and let me show you the only one that I really have. Sorry, I should have had that ready. Is you know, this CRKT Drifter. Hate this knife. Hate. It's heavy. It's you know, it's cold. It's you know, don't care for this at all. It never gets carried. However, this is basically the exact opposite, right? Super ergonomic. You know, G10 is lighter than steel, obviously, and it's just got like a warm feeling. Like even when it's cold outside, that handle, you know, it stays warm because it's in your pocket next to your body. I've actually been like, you know, walking or exercising or something like that, pulled the knife out, you know, just to play with it or something, and I actually felt, oh my god, this feels warm, you know, so it actually does absorb your body heat. And I don't know, I like, that's how I feel about it. It's kind of fuzzy, warm, you know, so it's got like an almost organic quality to it versus steel, I would say. Pretty much love that. You know, with hard use cutting, I found that it was very easy to use, you know, really good. So what about the triad lock? I'll combine this discussion with speed because I think they go hand in hand. Speed is a byproduct of the type of lock that you have in the knife, right? If you have an axis lock, different kind of lock, faster knife, right? You know, also you can have like assisted knives and whatnot, like this knockout. So I will say that the lock I am a huge fan of because of the strength. It allows you to go out and do things like baton, or perhaps put this into a survival role if you had nothing else, and it just gives you confidence overall as a user that it's super strong. Mind you, I've never experienced a lock failure. I do know that there's stronger locks and weaker locks, and this is definitely on the strong side. However, what that does do though is I find that operating it can be a little, you know, fatiguing, let's say, for the hands. You know, my hands have toughened up after using cold steel knives for a while. But if you're somebody who likes to open and close your knives all the time, there's better options out there. Maybe you see Benchmade, or, you know, some liner locks are really fast as well. So it's not the fastest knife in the world to open and close. I find that a fairly substantial wrist flick is necessary to get that open. Whereas with an axis lock, for example, I don't even need to move my wrist. It's just, it's almost like an assisted knife, but it's not, right? Love the axis lock. That's a separate discussion though. But I mean, if I just flick this, you know, half open at best, so it is necessary to give it wrist action. Sorry, this is my offhand. But yeah, so it's not fast. And when I first got it, something that actually prevented me from buying it originally was just I wasn't able to get it to open fast in the store. When they're new, there's a little bit of friction there. They're a little stiffer maybe. So it takes a while to break in. After it does, it smooths out a little bit over time. And I find that I'm able to open it a little better now than I used to be. It's not too bad, but it's one of those trade-off things. If you want the strong lock, you're gonna lose a little bit of speed, and that's just how it is, right? So let's just compare it size-wise with just a couple of other knives I have here on the table. I'll get this Recon one out of there. You guys have seen the cold steel already. So this is sort of a medium-sized knife, I would say, right? There's a lot of knives in this size range that compete with the American Lawman. It's kind of funny actually. Like you would not think that it's the same size as the Paramilitary 2, but you can see, like, more or less, it's pretty much the exact same length overall. And I think that this is around a 3.5-inch blade as well. Last one I'll throw in there is the Griptilian, of course, the full-size grip. And yeah, these are all sort of like medium-sized knives, right? And they're all in that size range. So there's a lot of competition. What I will say, though, is that when you sort of look at the value of this knife, it's the cheapest knife on the table for sure. And I think it's capable of doing more variable tasks than any of the other knives. Like, I'll just talk about them in order here. The Knockout, you know, pretty disappointed with this knife actually overall. This cost me $90. The assist broke in it, the torsion bar broke. So I mean, this isn't even broke due to being hard used. This is broke due to opening and closing it. I've actually fixed it now. They sent me a new torsion bar, but do I trust this design anymore? Not really. It broke on me just by opening and closing it. How can I trust it in the field? You know, the Paramilitary 2, absolutely amazing knife, you know, but this costs, you know, $130, $140 probably. That's a lot of money, obviously. You know, the Griptilian, super knife as well. Love that smooth axis lock, and I think it's pretty cool, all the different color combinations they have, and it's just super fast. Good company, made in the USA, right? Actually, all these are made in the USA except for the American Lawman, which will probably account for the price difference. But this is about $100. How much is the American Lawman? You know, I'd say around $70 where I am. I'm sure you can probably find it a little bit less, but let's say between 60 and 70. And it can do more than any of these other knives on the table. Will it hold its edges long? Maybe, maybe not. But, you know, it can baton through a tree or a piece of wood, which I definitely wouldn't do with any of these other knives. I actually did do that with the Benchmade, but it started making like kind of a crazy noise afterwards. Required some adjustment when I got home for sure. And that's the other thing too about the whole batoning thing, is if you do so, you are going to have to tighten the pivot afterwards. There will be a little bit of movement. The knife will not fail. It won't fall apart. It won't get noticeably, you know, there won't be noticeable movement there to the point where you can't use it, but you'll be able to wiggle it a little bit and feel something there. Come home, you know, do like an eighth of a turn on the pivot screw and it's back to normal. You know, pretty awesome. Last thing I'll say is how I ended up getting this knife. I gotta give a shout out to my buddy who gave this to me for Christmas. Pretty much awesome gift. I came home from Mexico and this was waiting for me on my desk when I got home super late at night, because he'd been coming in to look after my pet and water the plants. So it was really cool to come home and just find something like that on your desk, like after a really long day of travel. And so, I mean, it's got sentimental value for that reason. This was a knife that I looked at a whole bunch of times in the store, and I don't know, I never pulled the trigger on it. I looked at it probably at least 5 times I handled it. So I'm really glad that I eventually did get it. Some things you just won't buy for yourself and you need somebody else to buy them for you. And yeah, now that I've actually handled it, I totally would buy this knife for myself, and I would recommend it to others as well. Awesome. Cold Steel American Lawman. Thanks for watching.